tell you that I love you 100 times a day. You'll get tired of my voice, that's how much I'm gonna tell you that I'll miss you if you go.
What's up, my beautiful aquatic friends? Welcome back to another video. Hopefully you guys are doing just fine. I'm doing pretty damn good, and even gooder because I just received some great news, which I'm gonna go on and share with you guys later on in the video. For this video, we're gonna be playing at the Bicycle Casino, which I know I've said it in the past, this is not my favorite casino. It's actually my least favorite casino because I'm never profitable. But the last time I was here, it was actually profitable for the first time ever. If you missed that video, check it out. It's right here. I'll link it on the description below. That way you can check it out. We're gonna go on and be using Jeff Stimson's card protector. I don't know if it's in focus or not, but we're gonna be using his card protector. He's the very first vlogger I ever met. I have tons of respect for the guy. He's a vlogger. He's my friend. He's out there in Las Vegas, and he had stopped vlogging for a while, and now he's vlogging again. He's got a few vlogs out there, and you know, I just want to go on and encourage him, give him a shout out. Jeff Stimson, go on, keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm a big fan, so hopefully you keep doing what you are doing. Anyways, let me just shut up and let's get right into our poker. For this first hand of the night, and I do mean very first hand of the night, I go on and I sit down and I'm asked if I would like to buy the button. I didn't come all the way out here to be cheap, so I go on and I buy the button, and my purchase instantly gets me rewarded with a couple of dimes. Hell freaking yeah. Our opponent under the gun comes out swinging as he goes on and bets out 15 bucks. He goes on and gets one caller in middle position, and once it gets back around to me, no sir, I'm not just gonna call this. I go on and I repop him to 52. My opponent under the gun, who originally made it 15, takes a big gulp, and I'm not sure what that means other than I probably just moved some ground under him. Ultimately, he goes on and makes the call. The middle position player folds, and we're gonna go heads up in a 3-bet pot to a flop of 4, 6, 8 with 2 clubs. If my opponent has exactly 5, 7, the nice hand, sir, but I can't put any 5s or any 7s in this guy's range since he did raise from early position and called my hefty 3-bet. If my opponent indeed has any of these stupid draws, then I'm gonna have to make him pay for it as I go on and fire off a milky bet of 45 bucks. My opponent goes on and thinks about it for a fraction of a second and lets it go. We're gonna go on and take the very first pot of the night down. Hell freaking yeah. Now we're in middle position looking down at this beautiful queen jack offsuit, and we make it 15 bucks. An opponent in late position gets froggy and goes on and repops me to 60 bucks. Everybody folds, and when it gets back around to me, my queen jack is not really looking that pretty anymore. I asked my opponent if he would like a bad beat, and all of a sudden he turns into a freaking rock. I mean, a literal rock. I mean, he's not saying a word. There's no facial expressions, no movements at all. He's staring into the table without even blinking. I already knew I wasn't gonna call, but I just thought it was kind of funny because this guy was a vibrant, happy, chatty person at the table, and all of a sudden he turns into a stone, giving away the strength of his hand. All right, for the good news. Now, I know some of you guys know we were supposed to have a meetup game back in January, but shit happened. Things were not going the way things should have been going, and we had to postpone it. But now we got a date, March 19th. It's gonna be myself, Think Blue Poker, Happy Face Holdem, Doug McCusker, Andrew Locke. Yes, it's gonna be a great time. So hopefully we see you guys on March 19th. For this next hand of the night, I'm under the gun and I've put a $6 straddle to which everybody folds except our opponent on the button, who goes on and repops us to 18 bucks. The big blind calls, and once it gets back around to me, I'm gonna go on and look at the Michael Jordan hand, and even though I'm from LA, I'm gonna have to give credit where credit is due. Gonna have to play this one. I cough up the 12 more bucks, and we're gonna go 3 ways to a flop of deuce 6-4 with 2 clubs. It's not the greatest flop for us, but it's also not that terrible. We got a pair, we got a gut shot, we have a backdoor flush draw, so when my opponent on the big blind decides to donk lead out for 40 bucks, I'm gonna go on and peel one. I make the call, the original razor on the button folds, and we're gonna go heads up in position to see a 7 of spades on the turn. My opponent on the big blind makes a big mistake and fires the exact same bet of 40 bucks into a pot of over 130. If my opponent would have sized up his wager on the turn, I would have taken that bet a little bit more serious, but since it was the same exact bet he did on the flop, I'm gonna have to put him on some sort of a draw. Calling here makes sense, but since that 7 has given me a butt ton of equity, I feel like a raise is mandatory. I mean, I just can't shake off the feeling that my opponent is on some sort of a draw. Since I'm a non-believer, I'm gonna have to raise this. The only problem is that I only have about 250 behind, and if I raise it to, like, let's say $120 or so, not only am I gonna be giving him a fair price to chase his draw, but I'm also not gonna be left with not even a half-size pot bet by the river. Although I really wouldn't mind a call, I'd rather take the pot right here, so I'm gonna go on and do what needs to be done. I'm all in. 250 of my marbles go into the middle, and my opponent goes into the tank for what seems like an eternity before he goes on and flips over the 6 of clubs, to which I start dying little by little inside the longer he takes to make a decision. He ultimately ends up letting go of his hand, which feels like a gasp of fresh air after being underwater for such a long time. This bluff gets through and we're gonna take this pot down. Hell freaking yeah. We go on and switch seats to get a better recording of the table, and it's not long before we pick up Queen 10 offsuit on the button, and we make it 15 bucks after 2 players in middle position limp. The big blind makes the call, the first limping opponent makes the call, and red flag number 1 emerges when our second limper decides to wake the F up and repops us to 45 bucks. I make the call, the big blind makes the call, the first limper makes the call as well, and we're gonna go 4 ways to a flop of 8 Queen 6 rainbow. It checks to the 3 better, who quickly goes on and fires off a bet of 100 bucks. Even though I have top pair here, I'm not feeling too good about this. There's still a person left behind, but folding top pair is just gonna be way too nitty. I'm gonna go on and peel one off. I make the call, the big blind folds, and red flag number 2 is when our first limper decides to let it rip and go all in for 130. Red flag number 3 is when my opponent, who originally made it 100 bucks, goes all in for 180, unaware that he cannot do that, as the player who went all in for $1.30 didn't double his initial $100 bet. Now I know that I'm 100% beat, but since it's only $30 more to me, of course I'm gonna make the call and pray for a queen or a 10 on the turn, which of course doesn't happen, as a deuce of diamonds hits on the turn. My opponent bets his remaining $180 into a dry side pot, to which I quickly fold. The river is an 8 and both players have to show for the main pot, and of course they show pocket aces versus pocket 8s, and unfortunately aces are gonna get cracked by quads. For this next hand, I'm under the gun and I've put out a $6 straddle, to which the cutoff calls, the small and big blind both call, and once action is on me, I'm looking down at King Jack offsuit and I make it 30 bucks. The cutoff and the small blind are my only customers, and we're gonna go 3 ways to a flop of 8, 10, 5 rainbow. It checks to me and I'm gonna go on and fire off a C bet of 45 bucks, to which both my opponents call, and we are still 3 ways to see a 5 on the turn. The small blind checks and I go on and I give this one up. I check as well, the cutoff checks, and we're gonna go 3 ways to see a free king on the river. The small blind checks again and I'm gonna go on and check this one as well, in hopes that our opponent on the cutoff fires off a bet. After all, this looks incredibly weak after only betting the flop and checking back twice. There's 180 bucks in the middle that I really wish he could take a stab at it, but he does not. He disappoints us, he checks. Of course, we show our hand and we are good. For this next hand, I'm under the gun and I've put a $6 straddle, to which the middle position player has called, the late position player calls, both small blind and big blind both call, and we're gonna go on and look down at 7, 8 offsuit. There's about $30 of dead money in the middle that's making my butt itch because I'm so tempted to squeeze, but to be honest, I'm a little worried. 2 of these players have been caught limping with monster hands, including the small blind when he limp raised me with aces a few hands ago. And not to mention the big blind doesn't even fold his laundry, so if I do squeeze, it's gonna have to be this something at around the price of 100 bucks, and I just don't have the testiculars to do that right now. Like a big pussy cat, I go on and I check, and we're gonna go 5 ways to see a flop of king 9, 8 with 2 clubs. We flop bottom pair, and once action is on me, I go on and I check. The middle position player puts out a bet of 13 bucks, to which late position player calls. I go on and I call, then we're gonna go 3 ways to see a 7 on the turn, giving me 2 pairs, but also bringing in a second flush draw along with some straights. I check. The middle position player who made it 13 bucks on the previous street now checks, and our opponent in late position goes on and fires off a bet of 30 bucks, which is a pretty small bet. I'm out of position in this dangerous ass board, so I'm not gonna try anything funny here. I'm not gonna get crazy. I'm only gonna make the call. The middle position player calls as well, and we're gonna go 3 ways to what is arguably one of the worst cards ever. We go on and see a 6 on the river, which brings every draw ever known to man. Of course, I go on and I check with the intention of folding, but I don't have to worry about that because both players check. I show my 2 pairs, and somehow we are good. Now we're on the big blind looking down at 10 jack offsuit. There's been 1 limper in late position, and once it gets to the small blind, he goes on and makes it 15 bucks. I've been waiting all night to 3-bet this piece of crap, but I haven't been able to because I haven't had the right cards, and even though I know Jack 10 is not the greatest, it's just gonna have to do. This guy's been caught 3-betting lightly, so I'm just gonna go for it. I make it 45 bucks. Our opponent that limped in late position, he folds. Our opponent in the small blind, he calls. We're gonna go heads up to see a flop of king, queen, 7, all of them of spades. Small blind checks. I'm gonna go on and check this one back, and we're gonna go heads up to see a jack on the turn, bringing in 4 to a flush. Even though I have a pair now, it's not the right pair, it's not the right color, it's not the right suit, and when my opponent goes on and checks, that's an opportunity for me to go on and try to take a stab at it. I'm gonna see if he gives me credit for a spade, and I go on and fire off a bet of 45 bucks. He doesn't give me credit for a spade because he goes on and he calls. We're gonna go on heads up to see a deuce on the river. And my opponent goes on and checks again, and I don't think I could get him off any hand. If I wasn't able to get him off a 4 to a flush, then there's no way I'm gonna get him off on the river. I'm gonna go on and chicken out. I go on and I check, and my opponent goes on and turns over ace queen. He has a pair of queens, and it was the wrong time to 3-bet this guy. Nice hand, sir. Nice hand. For this last hand of the night, I'm just gonna tell you what it was because unfortunately I ran out of freaking battery and I didn't get to record it, but it was such a crazy hand. Shout out to the guy that I played this with. He raised it like to $20 pre-flop. I raised it to $40. He called. The flop comes. He leads out for 50 bucks. I call the 50 bucks. The turn comes. Now he gets all chicken shit and he checks, but no checking for me. I go on and I bet out $40. He calls, and on the river, I think it was like a $20 bet, river bet. And all of this without looking. It was blind, and we turned over our cards, and bam, I had a straight on the freaking turn. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. If you guys like poker related content, go on and give me a thumbs up. Go on and click that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Only one for me, no one else. I'm gonna shout it